Hi everyone, welcome back to Crochet Rocks. Tracy here, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how I made this blanket and this scarf and this cowl. Basically I'm going to show you the stitch that I used, the multiples I used, and how to do it. So with the blanket, I made this with a yarn from the USA, which is like so it's a 3-weight yarn, but it was quite thick when it worked up. And this is the Lion Brand A Star Is Born Baby Soft, and that's what I used for the blanket. And I just used a blue to give it a very simple UK double, which is a single crochet in the US border, and then just do a V-stitch, a modern V-stitch all the way around the outside in the same colour. So that's all I did with the blanket. So with the scarf, I made it with DK weight yarn, and I used this one, which is a King Cole Glitz in double knitting. It does come up thinner than the previous DK. This one is called Antique Gold, and it's premium acrylic and polyester. It's beautifully soft. So that's what I made the scarf with. And all I did differently with the scarf was on one row at the end, I finished on the row with all of the trebles, which are UK trebles, US double crochets. And then I just went all the way around the edge, picking up a UK double or US single all the way along one edge, and I got to the other end and I did the same kind of scallop border there, and then finished off by going all the way down the other side, picking up UK doubles or US single crochets. Then I just slip stitched to the first one, which is all the way back here, and buried my tail. So that is all I did with the scarf. When it came to the cowl, it's more of a neck warmer, a cowl, a snood, whatever you want to call it. I could have done it this way and made a ring, but I chose to just carry on. I wasn't sure what I was going to make, and then in the end I made it a cowl or a snood or an infinity scarf, whatever you want to call it. And I just did a simple mattress stitch join, which I have got on my channel. So that I made with ice yarn in Picasso in the lovely beautiful rainbow colours, and it took one and a little tiny bit to do this, finish this off. So with the blanket I used 3 of these. I didn't really have like a lot left of my third, and I just used a little end of a blue colour. So for this tutorial I'm going to use this beautiful Twist and Shout yarn, which unfortunately has been discontinued from Hobbycraft. I do have a little bit left in my shop. There's a link in the description box to it. But I just want to tell you, before I start the tutorial, that the scarf, the gold scarf, I did 31 chain. The blanket, I did 101 chain. And for the cowl, I lost track. Hang on a second. I did 31 as well. So that was that. Because the ice yarn, it did come up a little bit wider because that is a 4-weight. Now for my tutorials, I used a 5mm crochet hook. I think with this one, I used a 4.5 because it is thinner. But you can use whichever yarn you want, as long as you make sure you use the corresponding crochet hook. Okay, so I'm going to show you then my method of doing this. It's called the Wheatsheaf Stitch, and I start with a foundation half treble. Now that sounds daunting, I know, but it's not. So all we need to do is first of all make a slip knot. You can do that however you normally would. I've left a nice long tail to sew in at the end, and I'm going to chain 2. Okay, now in that first chain I'm going to make a UK foundation half treble or half double in the US. So I'm going to yarn over, and I'm going to go into that very first chain, and I want to make sure that I pick up the 2 loops. It's a bit fiddly with the first one. It can be a little fiddly with all of them, but I'm just going to make sure that I go into the 2 loops. So there's my loop on the hook. I've yarned over and I've gone into the 2 loops. I'm going to pull up my loop, so I've got 3 on my hook. Now I'm not going to finish off my UK half treble or half double in the US because I need to make the foundation, and for that I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to make 1 chain in the very first loop. I'm going to hold it there and I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 3 of those. Okay, so I'm going to do that again. I'm going to go into that very first chain, and I find it does help to hold on to it, and then I can make sure I've found it and I can go through the 2 loops. I'm going to pull up my loop. Okay, I'm going to do a chain with the first one, and I'm going to hold on to that, yarn over and pull through all 3. I'm going to yarn over, and again in that first chain, which is just there, going through the 2 loops. I did have them then and I lost one. There we are, through the 2 loops. So we'll pull these 2 aside. That's the loop on the hook. That's my yarn over. I've gone into the 2 loops, yarn over and pull up. And again, I'm going to make 1 chain, yarn over and pull through all 3. And that is a foundation half treble, and it can look a little fiddly. I've possibly picked the wrong yarn to show you this with, but just persevere. If you've used a plain yarn, it will be so much easier for you. Don't forget, you need the 2 loops every time. Sometimes you get a little bit more than you bargain for, and you get more than 2 loops. Just come out and go back in, making sure you just get the 2 loops. The reason you want the 2 loops is if you just go in one, then this edge will not be straight and nice. It'll be really uneven and, well, very strange. Okay, so again, make the chain. I hold it because it's easier to find, and go through all 3. Go back to the chain that you created. And the reason that I do this with this particular stitch is because you don't want it to pull. Now, I know you can use a larger crochet hook and make your foundation chain with that, but I just find this makes a much nicer edge. It really does. Anyway, what we need to do is multiples of 5 plus 1 more. Okay, so I'm going to leave you now. I'm going to pause the video to make your multiples of 5 plus 1. I'm going to pause it because if I'm counting, then I'm going to put you off. And if you need any more instruction on how to do this, then just go back and watch the start again. Okay, so I have 31, and what I'm going to do now is, there's my first stitch. I've got my, people always ask me why I do that, because as I finish my work, if I turn my work, I feel like my hook is twisting this chain. So I always do that just to put it in the right way. Okay, so I've got 31. Now my first stitch is going to be in this very first stitch here. Now, if you want to, I don't do my chain. I don't bother. But if I do a chain and I pull it right low, so it doesn't get confused with a stitch. Because in my first 2 stitches, I'm just going to make a UK double crochet or single crochet in the US. And in the first 2, 1 in each. I'm going to chain 3. And now I'm going to skip 2. And I'm going to do 3, like 1 in the next 3 UK double crochets or US single crochets. I'm going to chain 3, sorry, and I'm going to skip 2, 1, 2, and then I'm going to go into the next 3. I'm going to chain 3. I'm going to skip 2, 1, 2, into the next one, and do 3. I'll try and, actually my wool genie didn't want to pull out any yarn then. I will zoom in just a little bit, and hopefully you can see this is lovely sparkly yarn. So I'm going to skip 2, 1, 2, and then I'm going to do 3. Chain 3, skip 2, I've got a hair, and do my 3. I'm going to chain 3, I'm going to skip 2, and then in the last 2 stitches, just as we started with 2, we're going to end with 2. Okay, now you can see if we had done a chain, then sometimes this can pull into a curve at this point. You can kind of pull it and work it out, but this has a nice kind of elasticity, which is why I like to start this particular tutorial or this particular stitch with the foundation half treble or foundation treble in the UK. Right, so see what I mean? Now this is facing the wrong way and I've come back on myself. It's just something that I do. Excuse me. For the next round though, we are going to start making those lovely fans. And for the first stitch, we are going to just make a UK double crochet or a single crochet in the US. Don't forget, if you want to make that chain and cinch it down, that's fine. Now in this space that we created with our chain 3, we're going to do 5 UK treble crochets, which are double crochets in the US. So we're just going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then where we have our 3 stitches from the previous round, we're going to go into the center one and anchor this down with a UK double crochet or a US single. And then we're going to do 5 in the chain space. I forgot I was zoomed in. I hope I didn't go off camera. It's easy to do when you've zoomed in. So there's my 5, and there are my 3 stitches in the center one, the second one in. I'm just going to do my UK double or US single. So I'm going to carry on. I'm going to repeat that. I'm going to do 5 in my spaces, and I'm going to anchor it into the center of the 3 stitches, and I shall catch up with you once I've done my very last fan at this one here. Okay, so right, I've reached the end. Now just as we started with 1 US single, UK double, that's what we're going to end with in our very last stitch there. I'm just going to put 1 in there, and we're going to turn the work. Okay, so far so good. Now this is a 4-row repeat, and it is confusing at first, so if I were you, I would write down in your own plain English, your words, how you want to remember these rounds. Okay, so this one, basically we are making the spaces and the fans, but we're doing them in alternate ways. What do I mean by that? So we're making this one, and then the next row we're going in between, and then the next row we are mirroring that first one. Okay, so this round we are going to do what I call a stack stitch. You can call it a stack double crochet, a stack single crochet, but I'll just call it a stack. So in that very first stitch, I'm just going to insert my hook, pull up a loop. yarn over and pull through both of those. Now in this vertical post, I'm just going to insert my hook, pull up a loop and yarn over and pull through both of those. So I've made what I call a stack. Now that is going to get me up to the height of a UK treble or US double, but I don't really like the turning chain, and so that's what I do. And I'm going to chain one. Now with our fan, we want not the first stitch, we want the second, the third and the fourth, and we're going to do a UK double or a US single in those 3 stitches. So just like the first round of our pattern, when we were making our 3 stitches and then we were doing our 3 chain, we are kind of doing that again. So we're going to do 3 chain, and we're going to go into the second, the third and the fourth of our fans. And 3 chain. We're going to do that in every fan all the way to the end. So I will pause the video and catch up with you when I reach the end of the row. Oops, I split my yarn there. Okay, I will catch up with you when I get to the end of the row. Okay, so now I'm at the end of this row. We're going to almost mirror this end. So we want to chain 1, and instead of doing a UK treble or US double in there, I'm going to do a half treble or half double crochet. I find that for some reason, doing a full treble stitch or double stitch is a little bit too much in that very last stitch there. So now I'm going to turn my work again. Now this round, because we've got the space here, we're going to make half of our fan. Now you can make your stack into this first stitch right here, or you can just go straight into the chain space and make a stack. So that's going into this post, and now we're up to the right height. Now I'm going to do 2 in this space. Okay, so now we've got our 3. In the center one, we're going to make a UK double or a US single. Now we've got our chain spaces, we're going to put 5, just as we did before. And just as before, in our 3 stitches from the previous round into the center one to anchor that down. Okay, so in every space we're going to make a fan, and then in our 3 stitches from the previous round we're going to anchor that down with a UK double or a US single. Okay, so that's our repeat for this row. I'm going to pause it then, and I will catch up with you when I get to the end of this row. Okay, here we are at the end. I've done my excuse me, my anchor stitch. Now in the chain space that we created from the previous round, I'm going to put 2 stitches, 2 UK trebles or US doubles, and in the very last stitch I'm going to put my last UK treble US double. There we go, and I'm going to turn my work. So now we have done a whole row of our fans in between the fans from the previous row. So now we're going to start repeating these rounds. Okay, so in this first stitch I'm going to, or the first 2 stitches, I'm going to put a UK double, which are single crochets in the US. So that's in the first 2 stitches, chain 3, whoops, and then in the second, third and fourth of our fan, not the first one, but the second, the third, and the fourth. We're just going to put UK doubles or US singles. So that's our repeat. 3 chain, not the first one, but the second, third, and fourth. 3 chain. Going to repeat that all the way until the end of the row. Okay, so I've made it to the end. I'll get my hook tangled up. I've done my 3. So just as we started, we're going to just put a UK double and US single crochet in the last 2 stitches, because we started with 2 and we're going to end with 2. So that's what we're doing now. How do you figure out what row that you're on? That's one thing that I will sort of mention, because when I first started to do this, every now and then watching TV or something, I get a little confused as to which row was you know, my next start of the beginning of the following row. So if it looks flat like this one, if it looks relatively flat, you start with a UK double or a US single in the first stitch, and then you do your 5. I will show you on the next shell round that it looks completely different. And that is how, after a while, obviously, it becomes easy to recognize, but at first, not so much. So now we've got 3, we're going to go into that center one, anchor that down, and do our fan. If I go ahead of you, just pause it. But likewise, if you're making the blanket, just pause it until you catch up with me. I love this yarn, but when you've got a camera in between, it is easy to split it, but ordinarily it never splits. I think it's just because I'm kind of not crocheting in the usual kind of position that I normally would. I love this stitch. It really does look very effective, and it's not as hard as it looks. Once you get used to how your rows look, you'll easily know which one you're on. And then we go in the center one, my last fan. And as we started with just 1, again, we end with just 1. Okay, so now, excuse me, we are making this part. So if you don't look to this row, but you look to this row, that's what we are mimicking. So this round, we start with the stack, because we need to get up to the right height for our shells and fans. So we're going to do 1 chain because we're making this gap, and we're going to do our 3 UK doubles, US singles in the second, third and fourth of our fan, and now our 3 chain. Okay, I'm going to do that all the way along. Basically making it flat again. Okay, so I'm going to pause it then, and I will catch up with you when I get to the end of the row. Okay, so we're at the end of the row and we're making that space again. Remember, we're creating that, so we do 1 chain, and in our very last stitch, instead of a UK treble crochet or a double crochet in the US, I'm just going to do a half treble, half double. That way it stays the right height. Okay, so now we've got the hole. That tells us that this is the round where we do the half the shell at the start. I'm going to start with a stack, as I don't like the chains, and then 2 in the space, and then in the center of our 3, I'm just going to anchor that down and then do my 5. And so that's nice and simple. After a while, it really does start to sort of tell you what row is next. At first it's a little confusing because there are 4 rows. Okay, so I'm going to pause it then, and I'll catch up with you when we get to the end. Okay, so back at the end, in the space with the 1 chain, we're going to make our 2 stitches, and then in the very last one, we're going to put our last UK treble or US double. So now, this round, we're right up here. So what we've got to do in this particular round, or this particular row, is start with our UK double, US single in the first 2 stitches, and then 3 chain. It does help to take the yarn with you. And then we're going to do our 2nd, 3rd and 4th. So you're basically leveling this off again. And those are the repeat rounds. You're just alternating, making the shells, and then 1 round of shells and then the other round in between them. So you've got your first one, then the second one's in between, and that's it. You just carry on. And for, like I said, for the blanket, I finished on this round here, and then I leveled it off exactly the same, and then just made a simple border. If anybody wants me to do a tutorial specifically for the blanket, I will. Likewise for the scarf, but this basically is just showing you how to do the stitch and the multiples. So remember, if it's a foundation half treble, half double US, then you've got a multiple of 5 plus 1. So it's nice and simple. Once you get used to it, you don't lose your place anymore. It's easy to spot whether you start low or start low or start high up. It's really once you get used to it, it's like everything. Repetition is key. So that's it. That's how you do it. If you've got any questions, then please put them in the comments. If you want me to do a specific tutorial for the blanket or the scarf or whatever, then also just let me know in the description box. Also, if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching. Hi everyone, welcome back to Crochet Rocks. Tracy here, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to do this beautiful dragon skin stitch. It's also known as the Alpine stitch, but isn't the dragon skin stitch a fantastic name? So it's obviously got 2 names. Most stitches have many names, but this is a beautiful stitch. I've made a gorgeous blanket with this in a chenille yarn. This is one of the new Aldi yarns. It is quite thick, and the recommendation for the hook size was an 8mm. I used a 6.5 because that was just a little bit too much. But this is a whole 100-gram skein. So if you were using it to make a cowl or something like that, you would need a fair bit of yarn. I made it with Flutterby, which is considerably thinner, but it also looks good in an ordinary normal yarn. And I've done it with a variation as well to show you. So this bottom part here is the traditional Alpine or dragon skin stitch. I love that name. And here it is. So in the top one, these last 2 rows, I did it with a UK double treble, which is a treble crochet in the US, and it gives you a bit more of a pronounced bump. This does give you a kind of a scale, if you like. That's why they called it the dragon skin, because it does have scales, whereas this one does give you more of a raised bump. So all you would have to do is substitute the UK treble crochet, which is a double crochet in the US, with a double treble, which is a treble in the US. So I'm going to show you how to do it. So the first few rows are a bit of a setup row, because if you look at this, you'll see my first row is the wrong side of the work, and there's the right side, and it doesn't look right to me. Sorry, I thought there was a knock at the door, but it appears that's my washing machine. A bit uneven. Sorry about that. Don't know if you heard it, but it was quite an exaggerated knock. So I'm going to clear this away. I will then come back with some new yarn, another colour, and we'll start. Now, just another little word, that if you are looking for the left-handed version of this tutorial, it will be just after the first right-handed one. That's how I do my tutorials now. The left-handed version will be straight after. Unless you're watching this as a stitch compilation, that will be the case. And there is a timestamp in the description box to show you where that is, although I know lots of you do like to watch both for me. So I'm going to show you with an extra setup row so that we don't have our stitch on the wrong side of the work. Okay, I'm just going to pause it and I'll be right back with you. Okay, so I'm using a 4.5mm crochet hook then, and I've got this kind of orange salmon colour. I'm going to make a slip knot, which you can do however you normally would. And for this, we just want to make an even number of chains, okay? So it doesn't matter how many you do. For the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to do 20, okay? So I'm going to pause the video then while I count these, and I'll come back to you once I have my 20 chain. Okay, there they are. There's my 20 chains. I just also need to point out that I have a bit of a cold. So if I ever pause it because I'm going to sneeze or need to blow, then I do apologise ahead of time, but hopefully not. So this is our loop on the hook. That's our first stitch, our first chain there. In the second one, we're just going to insert our hook and do a UK double crochet, which is a single crochet in the US. So we pull up our loop and go through 2. Nice and simple. Insert, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through both of them. So we're going to do that all the way to the end. Now, some people like to go into the back bump of the stitch, and that's fine if you do that, but I'm just going to, for this tutorial, go in the stitch in the top loop. So I'm going to pause the video then, and I will catch up with you once we get all the way to the end of our chain. Okay, so I'm all the way to the end, and if you want your work, your actual stitch to be on the right side, I'm going to chain 1 and pull it down because I don't do turning chains as such. And in the first one, I'm going to do another UK double crochet, and I'm going to do 1 in every single stitch all the way along. So if you remember, if I say double crochet in the US, if you work in US terms, that's a single crochet. Okay, so I'm going to do that then, and I'll pause it again because it's going to be boring just watching me do that. And I'll catch up with you once I have my second row completed. Okay, so I'm all the way to the end, and it does twist when you make this stitch at first, so that's why it's kind of twisting, but don't worry about that. Now, this is kind of there's still a setup row for the actual stitch. So in the first stitch here, I'm going to do a stacked UK double crochet, which is a stacked US single. Okay, so to do that, I'm just going to insert my hook, pull up my loop, finish my stitch as we have been. But in this vertical kind of leg here, I'm just going to insert my hook into that one leg, yarn over, pull up my loop, yarn over and pull through 2. So if you look at the side, you have 2 chains, and that is the height of my UK treble crochet, and it's just not a skinny little stitch, so that's why I do that. I'm going to yarn over, go into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up my loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That's a UK treble or a double crochet in the USA. So I'm going to do 1 in every single stitch all the way to the end, just 1 in each. Okay, again, a little boring just to watch me do that all the way to the end of the row. So I will pause it and come back to you once I have my row completed. Okay, there we are, all the way to the end. So again, I'm going to chain 1 and pull it down. Okay, and in my first stitch now, and every stitch along, I'm going to make a UK double crochet in every single stitch all the way to the end, just as we did in the first couple of rows. So I'm going to pause this video, and I will catch up with you once we get to the end of this row. Right, so now it's looking a little like this. So remember, the first rows of this have been setting up the stitch, so you don't actually have to do those as long as you have your UK treble row and then a row of UK doubles. But I wanted to get a good foundation for that, so you do need to have that when you're just doing it as a stitch. If you're making it as part of a sampler, then you wouldn't necessarily need to do that. Okay, so now I'm going to do that stack stitch again. And this is where it changes. Okay, so 2 rows down, this was our last row, this is our 2 rows down. We're going to yarn over and we're going to do a front post treble crochet around this. So that's a front post double crochet in the US. And to do that, we go around this stitch. So we're going to go in that side, out the other side, and we're going to, I find it helps to turn it on its side. We're going to yarn over and pull through both of those. We're going to pull up our loop to nice and tall. We're going to pull through 2, and we're going to pull through 2. Okay, and our next one, which is above this stitch here, needs to be just a normal UK treble. If you pull this aside, you can see there's your unworked stitch. It's not really unworked, it's just worked down here instead. So the next one is just a straightforward UK treble crochet. Yarn over, ignore this one because we've just worked it, and we're going to go and do a front post around that one there. We'll pull up our loop, and we're going to pull through 2, pull through 2. Okay, and in the next one we're going to place a UK treble. So if you pull this aside, there's your stitch this one belongs to. So if you ever get confused as to which is your next one, that's all you have to do to work that out. We're going to ignore this post, we're going to go to this one, and we're going to front post around that one again. But don't forget to pull up nice and tall, because otherwise your work will dip down in the centre, and you don't want that. There's the unworked stitch, so this is our next one. Okay, we're going to do that all the way to the end of our row. All right, so I'm going to pause the video, and I'll catch up to you once I get to within a few stitches of the end of this row. Okay, so I'm at the end of the row. I've got one more in the second from the end to do. And then you need to find your last stitch and do one in there. Okay, so that's what it should look like all the way along. So now I'm going to do my chain, and I'm going to cinch it down like it doesn't exist, and do 1 UK double crochet in every single stitch all the way along. Okay, 1 in each stitch, nice and simple. Okay, so that again is a tad boring just to watch me do that. I will pause this then and come back to you once I've got them all done to the end. Okay, so I'm all the way to the end. My first stitch was going to be that stack again. That's without any chaining, just getting up to the height. And now, if we were to do our post, we would be doing our post into the same stitch as before. And that's not what we want. We want to alternate them. So the next stitch is our UK treble. And now we're going to do our front post in the next stitch. Okay, so there's our one that we did before, and this is our new stitch to front post. Pull up the loop. That's very important to do that, or your work does sag. And then we do one in the next stitch, and our front post around this one, which is between the last two front posts. And this is where it can look a little awkward, so you just need to pull it aside and you know which is your next stitch. Okay, so again, these are the two we did before. This is the one in between. We're pulling that one forward by doing a back post UK treble in there, and just one in the next. So it's the same principle as the row below. A drop stitch and a normal stitch, a drop stitch and a normal stitch, but we're going in between the previous drop stitch row. So we're doing the alternate ones. Okay, I'll do one more for you there, down here. Pull it up. Very important to pull it up. And one in the next, okay? I know I'm almost at the end, but I will pause it and come back to you once I've completed the row. Okay, so I'm almost at the end, and now we've got to do our last one. And then we will have 2 stitches remaining, because if you pull this aside, there is our stitch. We have 2 at the end, just as we had 2 at the very beginning. We've got 2 at the end. Okay, and that's looking good. All right then, so I did mention that I did a blanket in this stitch. If you want to see that, how I made it, was a baby blanket, I will put a link hopefully up here and at the end of the video. But the next row for this swatch, then we're going to do our 1 chain and pull it down, and in between all of our spike rows we will be doing 1 row of UK double crochets, but those 4 rows are the actual pattern repeat. So I'll pause it then and come back to you at the end of this row, and we'll take a look and recap over what we've done. Okay, so that is the 4 rows of the pattern all nice and complete, and as you can see, using the stack does make you have lovely straight edges. That's just my tail, so don't worry about that. Okay, so these 4 rows then are going to be repeated. So on our first row of drop stitches, we go in the second UK treble along, and then we drop down, and then we do 1, and then we do our drop stitch, then we do 1, and then we do our drop stitch, 1 and drop, so on. Excuse me, out of breath. And on the second row, regarding our drop stitches, we place 2 stitches. So we've got our stack and a normal treble before we do a drop stitch, and then we do a normal one. And that is how we go. So 1 row you will have 1 stitch before it, and the next time it comes around you'll have 2 stitches before it, and that is the same at the ends. And this is how we go along. So this row then, we are back. We need to do that stack, okay, and we are back to doing our front post drop stitch in the second stitch. And don't forget, you need to pull it up, and then in the next stitch, which is here, you can see that it does look slightly off center, so there's no harm in looking. There's the one we've worked, and there's the next one. And then we're going to do our next one between the 2 we've already completed, and then 1 in the next one. And we're going to do that all the way along. And remember, we should end off with just one stitch, which sometimes is a little difficult to find. So I'll pause the video then, and I'll come back to you once we get to that very end of the row. Okay, so here I am. We've got one to do. Because it's quite close, it does mask that stitch, so you do have to kind of pull that across and find it sometimes, but it is there, don't miss it. Okay, so now we're on our UK single crochet, or UK double crochet, US single. You don't have to do a chain for this one really. I always do it for the half treble, which is a half double in the US, but you don't really have to do it for this stitch. Okay, so I'm going to just go all the way along to the end. I'll pause it then, and I'll catch up with you once we get there. And maybe we'll look at our variation next. Okay, so you can see this pattern is emerging, and now we're going to complete this by doing our fourth row. Now, a word on if you want to colour change. Okay, that is completely up to you. If you change on this row, you will get a little bit of a spike in the new colour, which is very, very attractive. But if you change on the other row, so it'll be slightly cleaner by doing it on this row. But you can change colour on any row that you want, and I suggest you have a little play. Okay, so this is where we did our second one. So this time we are doing our drop stitch on the third stitch. So the stack counts as our first, our second, and now we're going to do our front post treble crochet drop down stitch in that third one, and one in the next, and then one in drop stitch in the next, and then a UK treble in the next. And we're going to do that all the way to the end. I will pause it then and catch up with you when I've got my last stitches remaining, and then we'll talk about the variation that I mentioned. Okay, so I'm all the way to the end. I've got to do my last one, and now I have 2 stitches remaining, just as we did at the beginning of the row. So that's 1 and 2. So what I'll do is we're going to decide which is the best one to colour change on, okay? So I'm going to leave my last 2 loops even on the hook, cut that yarn, and I'm going to bring in, cut that yarn, I'm going to bring in another colour, and we'll start looking at the different variations that we've got. Okay, so it's now set up on my genie. I'm changing colour on the spike round, and we'll see what that looks like, and then you can decide which one you think looks nicest. So I'm going to hold on to my 2 tails, and I'm going to finish that stitch with the new colour, and then I will do a chain and pull it down just to secure that. I don't really want to tie a knot in there because this is just a swatch at the end of the day. It doesn't matter about that tail. So this round is my UK double crochet round all the way along. I will give them a little tie. It's only a swatch, so we don't really want it to start looking a bit odd, do we? Okay, 1 in every stitch, just as we have. It's just a different colour, that's all. But one will give you a much more subtle colour change than the other, so we'll do both. Okay, so I'm going to do that all the way to the end, and I'll catch up with you there. Okay, so now our stack is the first stitch. It's slightly thicker, and they're both DK, so I don't know why that should be. Okay, so our first drop stitch then is the first next stitch, because this is kind of like the first row of our pattern. Well, yeah, first row, really. Yeah, they all have to be one after the other, don't they? Do you know what I mean? One has to come before the other, but this is where we go into the second one. So this is how you get a colour change along here. A little bit less drastic, if you see what I mean, because you've got the row, the foundation of the UK double crochets as a kind of the first bit of colour. Okay, so we'll carry on with this and all the way, and I might pause it then and I'll do a few rows so that we've got that colour change set up, and then I'll come back to you and show you what it looks like when we change colour on this this row instead. Okay, so I've done my other row. I'm going to cut this yarn and take off this colour. I should have brought 2 spindles with me, but I didn't. And pop this colour back in, and we're going to change colour at the end of this row instead, and we'll see how that looks. I'm going to hold on to both. Didn't really hold on to that too well, never mind. I'm going to do a little knot anyway just to make sure it doesn't go all baggy on me. Okay, so we're going to turn our work, and our first stitch is our stack this time. Just ignore that little bit of colour showing there. I didn't change colour how I normally would. So okay, so our second stitch is a UK treble crochet because we are now dropping into the third one, but this will give you a rough idea of the difference of changing colour on the other row. Okay, and you obviously you wouldn't probably have turquoise and orange as a colour scheme. You would probably be doing this on yarn that is a lot more colour matched, or even ombre in colour, but this will give you a good idea of what that's going to look like if you change colour on this row. It's a lot more dramatic. This is how it looks if you do it on the UK double US single row, and this is how it looks if you do it on the treble or US double crochet row. You can see it's a lot more dramatic, but it depends on the effect that you're after. So we'll go all the way to the end on this row, and then I will do one more row to get me back to the spiking, and I'll pause it then. I might actually do a couple because I want to show you the other variation, which will be a little bit different with all the colour changes. So I'll get a good distance and then I'll come back to you and I'll show you how it looks with the other variation. Okay, so here we are. We have our 2 sort of colour changes, and now I'm going to show you how the other, excuse these tails, they're annoying, I know, but how the other variation looks. So we're going to do a stack. Okay, and now the stack we've been doing is a double crochet, but if you just, that didn't go very cleanly, I must have split that. Let's start again. Went a bit far there, Tracy. Okay, let's just redo that. It's a bit prone to split, this yarn. Got it, I think, from, it's a West Yorkshire Spinners, I want to say. No, Women's Institute yarn. So the stack then. The one we have been doing is just going through 2 UK double crochets, but you can do 3 if you want to get up to the height of a UK double treble, which is a treble in the US. So with this row, this was our first spike here, so we're going to do a UK double treble in the next stitch because we want to spike along our third stitch. So that's through 2 and through 2, then through the other 2. And now we're going to do our spike 2 rows down as we did before, pull up our loop, pull through 2, pull through 2 and pull through 2. Okay, and we're going to do our normal double treble in the next stitch, and then we're going to pull up through 2, through 2 and through 2. So this is how that looks. Let's do a few more and we'll get a good idea of what that looks like. Whoops. Okay, let's just have a little look at that. So as you can see, it's a lot looser and a lot more leggy. If we didn't do, okay, so we've done our first, if we could do it into just a UK treble. So we've got our stack, which is 2 high, and then we're going to do our UK treble crochet in the next stitch, yarn over twice, go into this. So we're treating this as the UK double treble or treble US, and then all of the other stitches remain the same. Then we'll look and see what that looks like. It won't be so leggy, but you will get what I showed you before in the swatch. Before I started showing you this, I showed you a swatch. So we'll do a few more and then we'll have a look and see. This is actually, those people who can't pull up or don't pull up enough, it might be more helpful to do the yarning over twice for our spike stitch. Okay, so I think that's enough. We'll pull that up and we'll have a little look. So that is the difference. It's not a massive difference, but you just see this does have a little bit more kind of prominence. If you hold it like that, you'll see that this one does sort of pronounce a lot more than that. But that's the variations. I prefer this way, but you must kind of remember to pull up your loops. Let's finish this row because I don't know, I know it's only a swatch, but it'll bug me if I don't. And I'm not absolutely keen on this one. I find it more airy. You know, if you're looking for a nice cozy warm blanket or something to do like a cowl and you want it all nice and cozy, then the traditional way is better, but there is this variation that you can do. Okay, so we end on our 2 UK treble crochets. Okay, so that's it. That's the variations all done. How it looks when you change colour and your first row of your new colour is the UK double or US single, and that is how it looks if your first row is your spike stitch. So it's quite a drastic difference. Maybe if we were ombreing, so it was purple into kind of a more mauve into a lilac, then this would look quite a lot different, I guess, but both would look very nice. But anyway, that is the stitch tutorial. As I said, I will put a link at the end for the right-handed blanket and the left-handed one for those of you who are watching for the left-handed tutorial. And if I've forgotten to put it up there, apologies, but it will be at the end. Okay, thank you so much for watching. I will see you on the next one, but from now on I think I want to call this the dragon skin stitch rather than Alpine, because it just sounds a little bit more mystical. Okay, bye bye for now. Hi everyone, welcome back to Crochet Rocks. Tracy here, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this really lovely bean stitch. Now, it's always been a favourite of mine and I have made things of it in the past, but this is the first time that I've done a tutorial for it, and it is a lovely textured stitch. And just recently I've been doing lots of different textured stitches with a view to making something with them all. So this is made with the DK weight yarn from Poundland. I think it's called Bright Pinks, even though, as you can see, it's got many other colours in it. And I don't have a great deal of left of this in stock, but as soon as it comes in, I do kind of grab it. So I'm going to show you how to do this, as I said, and I'm going to show you with 2 different colours, and we will change colours at some point and get that part sorted as well. So the first one, these are Special DK by Stylecraft, and let me just bear with me a second. I'm just going to pause the video a second. That's better. I just needed a bit more space for my wall genie. Okay, so as I said, for this yarn I'm using a DK weight yarn, and I'm also using a 4.5mm crochet hook. Now I will say, don't go smaller with your hook size for this project. It's quite bulky, but also your foundation chain mustn't be too tight, or you will get a little bit of pulling in at the bottom. So if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and notification bell. If you follow me on TikTok, don't forget to follow. Okay, so for this we have any multiples of odd numbers. Okay, odd numbers is where we're at with this one. So we're just going to make a slip knot and crochet enough chain for your project. So I normally do about 31, which is what I did here. And that's quite a nice size. If I were making maybe a scarf, I would want to do that thickness for myself. Some people like them wider, but you know, it depends on what you're doing. So I'm just going to show you a swatch today. So I'm going to do a chain with an odd number, which is a little boring to watch. So a chain is yarning over and pulling through the loop on your hook. Like I said, you don't want this tight. So if you're a tight crocheter, I recommend you go up to a 5 for your chain, or if you're very tight, maybe a little larger than that. So I'm going to pause the video then, and I shall catch up with you once I have my chain done. Okay, so I have my 31 chain, which is fine. If you wanted it to be 31 wide, you would need to place another turning chain of 2, but that still makes an odd number, so it really doesn't make much difference on a swatch, which is what I'm just going to leave it as it is. But you want your odd number of chains for your project plus 2. That's the multiple. So to begin then, we're going to go in the 3rd chain. This is the 1st chain because this loop doesn't count. So we've got 1, 2. We're going to go and insert our hook into this chain. Bear with me, I couldn't see. 1, 2 and 3. And we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop, and we're going to pull it up a little ways because these are puff stitches. We're going to yarn over, go back in that same loop, yarn over and pull up that loop and bring it up to the same height, yarn over, go back in, yarn over and pull up that loop, bringing it to the same height. There we are. We're going to yarn over. We should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 loops. We're going to pull through all 6 and do a chain to secure that there. We're going to skip one. We're going to do the same thing in this stitch. Okay, so skipping that one then into this stitch. The hardest thing to remember is not to yarn over on your first stitch. So we're going to pull it up to tall, like nice and tall, to sort of bring it over here a bit. Yarn over, back in, yarn over, pull up a loop and bring it up to the same height. Yarn over, back in, yarn over and bring it up to the same height. 6 loops on the hook, so we yarn over all through all 6 and chain 1. Skip one again into the next one, straight in, yarn over, pull up that loop, yarn over, go back in, yarn over and pull up that loop, yarn over, go back in, yarn over and pull up that loop, yarn over and go through all 6 and chain 1 to secure that. So as you can see, we've got these little bubbles that look like they're starting to slant over, and that is what we want. Okay, so this is our repeat. If you're happy with that, then by all means pause this video and carry on, but I'm going to just do one more with you because it is a tricky little stitch. So we're skipping this one into the next, inserting our hook and pulling it up, yarn over, going back in, yarn over and pull it up, yarn over, go back in, get a bit of yarn out and pull it up. So you've got 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Yarn over all through all 6 tricky little ones, this one, and 1 chain to secure that. And that's all we're going to do all the way along. Skip 1 and then we'll make our little bobble. Skip 1, make our little bobble. So I'm going to pause it then, go all the way along, and I shall catch up with you when we get to the last few chains. Okay, so I have a nice long row of beans, and this is how yours look. Now I have 2 stitches remaining. We're going to skip that one, and we're going to do the bean in the very last stitch, which doesn't seem right to not end on a stitch, but it works perfectly, so that doesn't need to happen. So we're going to do the 1 chain to secure that, and now we have our neat little row of beans. So we're going to turn the work, and we're going to chain 2 for our first stitch. Now normally speaking I would do a stack, but for this you don't really need it. Okay, so if you have a look at this row of bean stitches, when you have your bean, you have this little opening at the side of each one. If you pull it a little, you can see it. It's just right there, this kind of triangular shaped little opening. So we're going to make a bean stitch in those, and we're going to go in the very first one. So we're going to pull up our loop, and then we're going to yarn over, go back in, pull up our loop, yarn over, go back in and pull up our loop, yarn over, go through all our stitches and make our chain. So basically that is where we're going to place every single bean stitch, in that lovely triangular shaped opening at the side of our stitch, which is made by our chain, I think. There we go, up. We'll do a few and then we'll take a look at it. Don't worry if I'm going ahead of you. You can pause me in a second and catch up. We'll do another one. Okay, so now if we look, we're getting them slanting in the opposite way. Kind of looks like a hair plait, where you've got it going one way then the other, and that is the effect we're looking for. And if you're looking at this and thinking, I don't know where to put that, if you pull it open, it sits up nicely for you right there. Okay, so I'll do this one and then I will pause the video and I will catch up with you once we get to the end, and I'll show you how we end the row on this particular row. Okay, so I've made it all the way across and I'm now at the very last stitch, and we have our 2 turning chain right there next to the bean. That is where we're going to place our bean stitch. Okay, so we're going to go straight in there. And I must say that with the other yarn, that variegated yarn that I made the swatch with, don't forget to do the chain to secure it, that was harder to find. It's a slightly more fuzzy yarn, so those end stitches were a little harder to kind of open and find. This one has been very easy. Okay, so now that second row is our repeat. From now on, that is our repeat row, and every row we do will be the same. 2 chain, bean in this triangular part next to our bean stitch. And if yours isn't as prominent as mine, just give it a little pull aside and you can see it. Okay, so that is our repeat, row 2. Obviously the foundation row is slightly different because there are no openings for our bean stitch. We have to make them. Okay, so I will pause the video again after this one, go all the way to the end, and we will change colour to show you how that's done. Okay, so I'm at the end, and once again I'm just going to do the last one with you. It is a little harder to see that opening this time. Is it there? But I think it's there. I'm just going to go in there. Yeah, that's the one. So I'm going to complete my bean in there. That's the only thing with that last stitch. Sometimes it can be a little harder to see. So we do our chain to complete that stitch anyway. We just do that one chain, and then we're going to swap our yarn over. So what I'll do is I will just leave a long tail and cut that to remove it, and bring in another. It's the same yarn, same Stylecraft Special DK, but in the colour of saffron this time. Okay, so what we do now is we will just switch this over. So I'm going to hold on, I'm going to go 1, 2 chains at the moment, and I'm going to pull this one down so it is hidden, so that finishes off that colour. We can pull it so that you can't see where it's going to join from. Now you can just carry on, but if you're worried that will work its way open before you get chance to secure those on your work, just put a little knot there. It's not going anywhere now, but that doesn't have to be the way you join. That can just be for now to secure it, to stop it from moving. And now we're free to ignore all the tails and to just start doing our bean stitch with our new colour. So this is how to change colour if you didn't want to do it with, like I did, a self striping yarn. But it works really well with a self striping yarn, or with solid colours. So the things to remember for this stitch then is, don't make your foundation chain too tight. You really don't want to be in that one, because it will then pull like if you imagine a cuff at the bottom of the pullover. It won't be very nice. So this one, I must admit, I did pull. It was a little bit tight. You can see it just goes in slightly. It's not too bad. You can kind of pull it out, but it was a little bit tighter than it should have been. So it reminded me to tell you that. Oops. Anyway, let's carry on. This is how we have changed colour, and we'll do a couple of rows of that, and we'll have a look and see how it's looking. But it's a lovely versatile stitch, this. Really pretty. I like the way that it goes from one side to the other. The hardest thing to remember with this, as I said, is not to chain sort of yarn over on your very first, like in there, not to yarn over before you go in. That was the hardest thing for me to remember. But once you get it going, it's a really nice stitch. Okay, so we'll have a look at the end of this row, how our work is looking with 2 different colours. And then maybe I'll pause it and do a couple of rounds and come back and show you how it looks when they're the same amount and it's even. I love this stitch. It's really interesting. It's an interesting kind of variation on a bobble stitch. Lovely for scarves and infinity scarves, fingerless gloves, anything that's kind of, you need it a little bit chunky, because this is a DK weight yarn, but it makes kind of a chunky result. That's the word I'm kind of looking for. Okay, so we go between our chain as before and complete our bobble stitch. So yeah, it did seem wrong at first, didn't it, going and having a bobble at the end, but as you can see, because you do 2 chain on the next row, it does actually work out quite well. So let's open that up again, and that's how it's looking at the moment. I'm going to do a couple more rows of the bobble stitch, bean stitch. It's not a bobble stitch, it's a bean stitch. Do a couple more rows and we'll come back and compare what it looks like with just changing colours, manipulating them, or what it looks like with a variegated yarn. Okay, so now I have 3 rows of each colour, and so it's quite even. One thing I really like about this is you can go straight in on that foundation chain row, and so all of your rows are even. There's no kind of one row of UK doubles or US singles at the bottom to make it kind of look like a bigger, thicker part. So if you were making an infinity scarf with this, you would get exactly the same amount of space, unless you just did variegated, which is this one. So I think it looks really, really lovely with both kind of scenarios. It's just beautiful. I mean, this does have a slight fuzz, as I say. It's not really a fluffy yarn, but it does have a little fuzz. It's beautiful yarn to work with. Really, really lovely. And I think it looks gorgeous, really, no matter what I crochet with it. Whatever swatch I do, it always shows the stitch off so well using this yarn. It's just really pretty. But for a kind of a DK weight, it does give you a lovely thick texture. So, you know, if you're wanting something thick but not ridiculously over thick, it might be worth, if you usually use a worsted weight or an Aran or a chunky even, to drop down to a DK for something with this stitch. Otherwise you're going to get a really thick result. Okay, so I hope you liked that one. I will see you guys on the next. And don't forget, if you're watching this as part of a compilation, it would just be a right-handed tutorial. But if you're watching, or even a left-handed tutorial, but if you're watching the standalone stitch tutorial, the left-handed one will begin straight after this one. And there'll be a timestamp in the description box. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye for now. Hi everyone, welcome back to Crochet Rocks. Tracy here. Now this may look like a odd little sample, but I'm going to show you all of the different effects that you can get with the bobble stitch. So there are 4 different types on here, and the first one is working with UK trebles, which are US double crochets. The second one is working with UK doubles, which are single crochets in the US, and still offsetting these bobbles so that they're not in a line. And then the third one is with a half treble or half double. So then I did this one to show you how you can just stack them one on top of each other without the gap if you wanted this kind of effect. And so I'm going to show you that. Now they're all the same amount of stitches, but as you can see, because this one has kind of a bobble more or less at the end, and they are quite wide, it has made it a little bit of a wider effect, but there are the same amount of stitches here. So I'm going to get ready to start my tutorial. So if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and hopefully you'll be informed when new videos pop up. So I'm just going to use some DK yarn. This is Stylecraft Special DK. I've forgotten the name of this one, but if I can find it out, I'll put it in the description box if any of you are interested in finding out what yarn this was. I have several in my shop that look similar, so I'll find that out. I'm also using a 4.5mm crochet hook. With this yarn though, I found that a little holy at the bottom there, so you could, if you wanted to, drop down. The strands are more or less comparable. This might be a little bit thinner, so yeah, just, you know, if you didn't want this kind of effect, then you might need to, you know, drop down your hook. But I think it would be better to show you with a bigger hook. So we need to have then a slip knot, which you can do however you normally do. And you need a chain. So our chain for this are a multiple of 4 plus 3. And that works out for all of these different types. And that's because we basically need an odd number. So just, I'm going to pause the video while I make my chain, but I will show you my chain. It's yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through, just in case you're not familiar with that. Okay, so there's 4 to get me started. I'm going to pause the video and I'll come back to you once I've done 4 plus 3, maybe about 23 stitches. That's, I think, what I did here, just quite a nice sample size. So I shall pause it then if you haven't already. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. Hopefully you'll be informed when some of my videos pop up. I'll be right back. Okay, so the first one I'm going to show you is this with the UK treble crochets. Okay, so in the 4th chain from our hook, so that's not this loop on the hook, obviously, 1, 2, 3, and in there I'm going to make a UK treble, which is yarn over. It's obviously a US double. Yarn over and pull up a loop. We've got 3 on our hook. Yarn over and pull through 2. Yarn over and pull through 2. I'm going to place 1 of those in every single one of the chain all the way to the end. Nice and simple. Okay, so that would be a little boring to watch. I'll pause the video then and I will catch up with you once I get to the end of my row. Okay, so I have 1 in each stitch, and what I'm going to do is get that tail out of the way for a start. And my first stitch in this one here is going to be a stacked double crochet or a stacked single crochet in the US. So I'm just going to insert my hook into that first stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through both of those. Then in this one here at the side, just this one loop, I'm going to reinsert my hook, yarn over and pull up the loop, yarn over and pull through both of those. Now that gives me the height of a UK treble, which is a US double crochet, and I'm going to place 1 UK treble in the next stitch. So we have 2 stitches at the end. Now we're going to make our very first bobble. Okay, so the bobble is the same however we're making this, and it is a yarn over, go into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, but we're not going to complete that stitch. We're going to yarn over, go back in, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. We're going to do this a total of 5 times. That's 2, that's 3, that's 4, and there is number 5. So we will have 6 loops on our hook, and we're going to yarn over and pull through all of those, and we're going to push that with our thumb a little. Okay, and then we're going to place, no chain, just going to place a UK double crochet, which is a single crochet in the US. So if I mentioned these stitches just once, so if you hear me say double crochet and you follow in US terms, you'll know I mean a single. Okay, so we've done 1, we're going to do another 2, so that's 1 and 2, so 3 altogether. And if you turn this over, you'll see our very first bobble stitch. Okay, so we've done our 3, we're going to place another bobble in the next stitch. So once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. Yarn over, pull through them all, push it out slightly with our thumb, and 3 UK double crochets in the next 3 stitches. Now we have 2 bobble stitches. Okay, and that's our repeat. Excuse me. So in our next stitch, we're going to make our bobble once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, and 5 times. Through them all, push it slightly with our finger, and 3, 1, 2, and 3. So we're making a nice row of bobble stitches with 3 UK double crochets in between them. Okay, so we're nearly at the end. I might as well stay with you and do the rest with you. Okay, so now we have 3 stitches remaining. We're going to place our bobble stitch in this next one. Can't get it in. Okay, pull through all of them, pop it out, and in our last 2 stitches, we're just going to place 1 UK double crochet. So we started getting it in the top of my chain. So we started with 2 and we've ended with 2, but in between we have 3. Now this round we're just going to do our stack in the first stitch. Don't have to chain, we're just going straight in with this stack, and in the next one, which remember we had 2 at the end, we need to go into the next stitch and make a UK treble crochet. Now we need to place 1 in our bobble. So if you look at our V's, you see this elongated V is our bobble stitch. So we're going to place 1 in that elongated V. And then 1 in the next 3. 1, 2, and the third one is right next to the bobble, okay? Mustn't miss any of these or our stitches won't work out for our next row. So 1, 2, and 3. And once again, there's that elongated one there. We need to go into that slightly round the back because of the way the bobble stitch works. Okay, so that's what we're going to do all the way to the end. 1 in each of these 3 between, and that one is right next to it, and 1 in that elongated V there, which is our bobble stitch. Okay, so I shall pause the video this time and I'll catch up with you once I get to the end of our row. Okay, so I have my last 2 stitches, and remember we start with 2 and we end with 2. Okay, so just go in that last one. Not sure we're in the right bit, but never mind. Okay, so now we're going to offset these bobbles so that they are in between our work. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go in the first stitch with a UK double crochet and 1 in the next 3. So that's 4 altogether. And now we're going to make a bobble. Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, and 5 times. Pop it through and make 3 UK double crochets. So there's always 2 at the beginning, always 3 between, but we're just starting from a different point. Make a bobble and we will stop and have a look at how it's looking. It does feel as if it's, oh, nearly did a chain. So used to doing a chain after things. 1, oops, I got caught there, split yarn, 2 and 3. So we'll turn it over, and as you can see, they're now offsetting, but it's whether you like this row as it stands with that distance apart and the fact that it kind of does have holes. So we're going to end this row. We're going to go all the way to the end, and what we're going to do now is another bobble. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Pop it through, and 1, 2, 3. This is our last bobble on this row. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Pop it through, and we'll have 4 stitches remaining, and we're going to go, I didn't go through both loops there, that's better, it's hard to do with the camera in the way. 2, 3, and in our last one, which I'm having trouble seeing, turn it round, and you can see our bobbles are nicely offset, and it might be that the light's shining on there, but you can see they're nicely offset. So I'm going to show you what it looks like now if we change the stitches between. So we're going to make one, as we did before, UK double crochet in every stitch all the way along. Just remember we've got 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then into that elongated stitch at the back of the bobble there, and then 3 in between, 4 at either end and 3 in between. So I shall pause the video then, and I'll catch up with you when I've got to my last few stitches. Okay, we've got our last 4. Remember, there's always 4 at the start, 4 at the end on this row, and those 2 rows form the repeat if that's how you're working. The first one, you will have 2 stitches before you bobble, 3 in between, and then you, on the next bobble row, you've got 4 and then 3 in between. So obviously if you were repeating this, you would now do 2 and then a bobble, and you would get them forming a nice pattern. But I said I would show you what happens if you use a different stitch. Now that means you will have a different stitch multiple, because the start of our rows will be maybe a UK double or US single or a half treble, depending on what you're doing. So you won't, all you need to know is you need to have an odd number of stitches. So you start with an even number of chains. This will still work out because we did, but it just depends on what you're making. I just need to pause the video a second because I need to put on my aircon. I'm getting really hot. I'll be right back with you. Okay, sorry about that. It will take a while to kick in anyway, but I needed to put it on. So now this row is exactly the same. We're going to just do, I need to wipe my hook. Bear with me a moment. I told you I was getting hot. It's starting to squeak. Hate that. I think everybody does, don't they, when it gets squeaky. Okay, wiped it. Just be careful not to touch it. And we're going to do, this row will be the same. So 2 UK double crochets and our bobble in the next. Don't forget to just pop them out a little bit with your finger, and then 3 in between. So we're going to repeat that all the way along, and at the end we will have 2 stitches to go into, just the same as at the beginning. So it's just a repeat really of row 2. So I'll pause the video and I'll come back to you at the end of the row. Okay, so I'm at the end of the row and I have my last 2 stitches. So that first one, that first UK double crochet after your bobble is what really anchors that down. So now we're going to do this with a row of just UK double crochets. So we're going to go in the first one. Easier said than done. And the second one. And then into our bobble. And then 3 between. Exactly the same as before. I'm going to pause the video then, and I shall catch up with you once we get to the end of the video, end of the row. Okay, so I'm right at the end, and we're going to turn our work, and now we're going to place 1 UK double crochet in the next 4 stitches, just as we did before. And then make our bobble row exactly the same as before. Okay, so we've seen that row a few times, so I'm going to pause the video then, and once I've got to the end of this row we'll stop and we'll have a look at that. Okay, so there we are. That's what it looks like with the UK trebles in between, and this is what it looks like with UK doubles in between. So double crochets and single if you're in the US. I like this one better, but it might just depend on the distance you need your bobbles to be apart. So the last one that we're going to do then is how it looks with a UK half treble, which is a half double in the US. So I do a chain and I cinch it down, and I only really do that on the half treble, otherwise you get a nasty bulge, a loop sticking out the outside. So 1, 2 and 3, 1 in the back of the bobble stitch, and again 1 in the 3. So I shall pause the video then and come back to you once we've done this row of UK half trebles or US half doubles. Okay, so done the whole row. Now I'm going to turn my work and I'm going to do my bobble row, but this time it's the first 2 stitches and then our bobble, because we're back at the start of our repeat. Okay, so I'll make my first bobble in there. And my 3 UK double crochets. So what I'm going to do then, because you're familiar with how the sequence works, I'm going to do a couple of rows to do a whole kind of sequence. It's rows 1 to 4, using the second row as our half trebles. You might not want to see all this again, so I'm going to pause it then, and I'll come back to you once I've completed this row and we've got a couple of rows to show. Okay, so I've got to the end, and now that is a whole pattern of UK half trebles in between. So you can see you've got quite a big gap between the bobbles there with these kind of big stitches. Then you've got no real kind of sort of holes really, not to speak of, and then you've got slightly larger sort of spacing apart, but again with a nice dense stitch. So that's the difference between the 3 types of stitch in between. Our bobble rows are all the same on this particular swatch regardless of what stitch we're doing on our alternate row. So now I'm going to show you how you can align these and have quite a dense bobble pattern. So this is a bobble row, and how are we going to do that? We are going to make, I'm going to do a chain this time and cinch it down. I find it helps sometimes with a stitch like this because it is quite congested. So in our first one, we're going to make a UK double crochet, and in the next stitch we're going to make a bobble. And we're going to do that bobble, and then in the next stitch 1 UK double crochet, and then the next stitch a bobble. So they are very close together. And in the next stitch a UK double crochet. So that's what we're going to do all the way along. 1 bobble, and 1 UK double crochet, and that is making just a row of bobbles with very little in between. I'm going to continue to do that. I'll pause the video and I shall catch up with you once we get to our last stitch. And as I said before, don't worry if it does pull out a little at the side. It's because previously we didn't have a bobble there. Okay, so I'm almost at the end. I have 2 stitches left. So we're going to have a bobble, and then 1 in our last stitch, and it will it will pull it out to the side because obviously these are wider than the stitches that we had. Interesting that it doesn't do it this side, but it will pull it out. Okay, so our row in between then is going to be a row of UK double crochets. So I'm going to do that chain and pull it down so it doesn't get hidden. So remember, we have to go into that first stitch, which was our ending double crochet, 1 into the bobble, and there'll always be 1 in between and 1 into the bobble stitch. 1 in between and 1 into that elongated V at the back. And you get split your yarn if you're very unlucky. 1 in between, 1 in the bobble. Okay, so I'm going to pause it then, and I shall catch up with you once we get to the end of the row. Okay, I'm at the end of the row, so I'm going into my last bobble, and don't forget, there at the side is our last stitch, which we do need to go into. Now we're just going to repeat that row. So like in our first stitch, 1 UK double crochet and our bobble in the next stitch. Pop it out, and 1 UK double crochet, which anchors it into the next stitch. So that's our repeat then, a bobble and 1 UK double crochet. So basically the things to remember about bobble stitches, they are always done on the wrong side of the work, because if you did them on the other side, the bobble will face this way. It's okay if you want double-sided bobbling, but not many of us would. So they're always done when you're working on the wrong side of the work. Also, there's always at least 1 UK double crochet, US single crochet in between them, because it anchors them. We don't chain in between them, we just anchor them down with a stitch. So I'm going to repeat that then all the way to the end. In fact, I'll do a couple of rows, and then, as you've seen this in action, I'll do a couple of rows of this and rows of UK doubles in between, and then I'll come right back and show you how that looks, because you've seen, all you have to do is repeat that row and the row after of UK double crochets. Okay, so I shall pause it then, do a few and come back to you. Okay, so there we are. That's what that would look like if you were doing bobble after bobble row where they're one on top of the other. Of course, you can do your 3 in between and just have them a bit more of a gap between, just as you did before, but I kind of like that. I think that looks kind of good. Now, just a word on changing colour. If you were going to change colour, you'd just do that exactly the same way that you would normally, and that's just not got all of my stitch. There we are. So when I was finishing that last one, I'd have 2 loops on the hook. I would just bring in my other colour and finish that stitch. I'd hold on to that part, finish that stitch, and maybe do my little cinch down chain, and then I'm ready to start my next bobble row in a new colour. That's how I would change colour if I were going to carry on and I needed a colour change. I kind of like the way the back looks of this one. I like this kind of square vibe that it's got going on. But yeah, that's the bobble stitch and all the different sort of variations that you can do with the bobble stitch. I hope you like that one. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys on the next one, and bye bye for now. Hi everyone, welcome back to Crochet Rocks. Tracy here, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful stitch. It's called the aligned cluster, and some people have called it the aligned puff stitch, but it's not a puff stitch really. It's done by UK terms, trebling together, and it is very similar to a moss stitch with other stitches thrown in. What do I mean? Well, I'll come to that, but so this is how it looks with this variegated yarn. This is the Poundland yarn that always makes every stitch look phenomenal, and I like this, and it's got so many kind of possibilities. I decided to see what it was like by doing one solid colour. Now this is a DK yarn, but it's quite thick, and I used a 5mm crochet hook with this because it's more of an Aran. It's classed as a DK, but it is very thick for a DK. And so that's what it looked like in one colour. I wanted to see how it would work up in a cotton, and I like it. I like it a lot. You can see the definition really, really well in cotton. So that was with a cotton DK and a 4.5mm crochet hook. Then I had a brainwave to see what it would look like as a square. So you can see with this square how it is akin to a moss stitch, because you've got this moss stitch kind of row and it starts that way. So let's have a look. I found that just a little bit tight, so if I were to make that into a square, I think I'd need to do a little bit more work on it. But I'm going to show you how we do this stitch, and I'm going to use this variegated yarn, which I used to make a pair of baby mittens and have rather a lot left over. So using a 4.5mm crochet hook, and you need to make an even number of chains. So any even number that you need for your project, just go ahead and chain an even number. So a chain is to yarn over and pull through. We don't want them mega tight, but at the same time not ultra baggy. So just, I've got 4 already, so I'm going to pause the video and I'll come back when I've got enough for my swatch. Okay, so I've done 20, which I think is plenty. Poetry, what could ask for more? So this is our loop on our hook. This is our first chain, And in the second chain, I'm just going to pop in my hook and make a UK double crochet, which is a single crochet in the US. And I'm going to chain 1. Then I'm going to skip a chain and do another in the next. I'm going to chain 1, skip a chain, and in the next I'm going to place, split then, another UK double crochet. And that is our repeat all the way along to the end of the row. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video then, and I shall carry on doing my 1 UK double crochet, 1 chain. So if during this I say double crochet, if you're working in US terms, you'll know I mean a single, and so it won't get confusing with me saying it all the time. Okay, I'll see you at the end of the row then. Okay, so here I am at the end, 2 stitches remaining. I've done my chain, so I'm just going to place my last one in the final stitch of that row. I'm going to chain 1 and I'm going to cinch it down very low. Why do I do that? Because I don't do turning chains anymore, but my next stitch needs something. Otherwise, if you don't do it, you get like a little bulge at the side. So in that very first stitch, I'm going to do a UK half treble, which is a half double crochet in the US. So you pull up all 3 loops and go through all of them. Now in this very first chain space, which is right next to our stitch, we're going to do our first cluster. So we're going to yarn over, go into that chain space, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2 and stop there. We're going to yarn over, go back in, pull up our loop, yarn over, pull through 2 and stop there. And we're going to do that twice more. Once, twice. You know you've got enough, you've done enough when you have 5 loops on your hook. I'm going to yarn over, pull through all of those and chain 1. And then I'm going to do exactly the same thing again in the next chain space. Once, the yarn stuck. Twice. 3 times. 4 times. Pull through them all, 1 chain, straight to the next chain space. The first round, it does look difficult to sort of see where your chain spaces are. We'll have a little look in a second. I'll just do this one. I want to, if you pull it out, you can see them. So there's one there, there's a stitch, and there's the space. So yeah, sometimes you can see like a little bit at the side, like with that one. It's just part of that stitch. So make sure when you're going along that you just go into the next chain space and make your cluster 1, 2, 3, 4, through all 5, chain 1. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'll meet up with you again just before I get to the end of this row. Okay, so I have my nice neat little row, and I have 1 more chain space to do a cluster. So this time I'm going to pull through all 5, and I'm not going to chain. I'm going to make a UK half treble in that very final stitch, just like I did at the beginning. Okay, so there we are. We've completed that row. I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to pull it right down so we don't even see it. It's just there finishing off our row. But this is what it looks like from the back. And if you pull it apart, you can see the spaces between. You can see you can see them now. Sorry, it's very sunny today, but it keeps going in. Okay. So this row then, we're going to, in our very first stitch, we're going to make a UK double crochet, which is single crochet in the US. We're going to chain 1. Between our clusters, we're going to do our UK double, chain 1, UK double, chain 1, UK double, chain 1, and that's our repeat. That's the moss stitch part of this. Okay, so chain 1, might as well stick with you to the end of this row because it's such a quick row. And it also helps to pull this back in line, so those stitches are quite puffy. Okay, so we're at the end. There's no gap now. We've just got our stitch and our half treble. So all we do is do our chain and go straight into that last stitch. Okay, so now we turn our work again and we've got these rows with our chain spaces again. I'm going to chain 1, pull it down, and in this first stitch, my UK half treble. So that is the very first stitch that will, next to our loop. Okay, and then in this very next hole, our chain space, we're going to place a cluster. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4. Got 5 loops, pull through them all, chain 1, straight on to the next chain space. Okay, so now you can see that they're directly on top of the ones below, aligned. Okay, so that's our repeat then. 1 cluster, 1 chain, and we're going to do that all the way to the end of the row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops, chain 1. Okay, I shall pause it then. I'll catch up with you when we get to the very end of this row. Okay, we're once again at the very end and we have our chain space and our last stitch. Okay, so we're going to do our cluster into the last chain space. No chain, and straight into our last stitch with our UK half treble. Okay, so what I really like about this stitch, and if I bring in one of my previous, this one's got the most, I just wound the yarn up too tight. It gives you this really beautiful straight edge, especially if you do cinch down those chains, you will get that really, really nice edge. So I'm going to cinch my chain down and I'm going to turn my work, and so I'm back on the row of moss stitch. So straight into the first stitch with a UK double crochet, chain 1, and in between the clusters we're going to do our double, chain 1, our double, chain 1, and so on. And I'll stay with you to the end of this row because it is a crazy quick row to do, which we all love, right? We like it when things work up quickly and are easy to achieve. Okay, so at the end, 1 chain and go straight into the last stitch. Chain and cinch it down so we don't get the bulge, and we're back onto our cluster row. So straight off, our UK half treble in that first stitch and straight in with our cluster on the next. So the only ones that are different are the first and the last, because we don't have those chain spaces. 5 on the hook, all the way through, chain 1. So if you don't want to count how many times you're doing this, because maybe you want a project while you're watching TV or something like that, as long as you have 5 on your hook, you know you've done the right amount. Okay, So I'm going to pause this video then. I will do a few more rows and come back and show you how this is working up. Okay, so that's how it's looking, and I really like it. I have to say that I have quite a few projects in mind that are going to have this stitch as an experiment. So I wonder then, how's this going to look if we did this with just treble 3 together instead? So have I done my chain? Yes, I have. So I will do a little bit of an experiment with you guys now, and we'll have a look and see if that looks just as good with a little bit less bulk in our stitch and how it looks, because you know they are quite close together. I think they look really good, but it would be interesting to see how this is going to work and look with just a treble 3 together. So here we go. It's nice and quick, that row. I definitely need to cinch it down for my half treble. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. We should have a bit more daylight kind of showing. 1, 2, 3. If it looks more or less the same, we'll save some yarn. 1, 2, and 3. But if it's not as nice, we'll soon know. 1, 2, 3. You can see it's not as wide. Okay, so be a bit boring just to watch me do this, so I shall pause it, do a few rows, and come back and show you what it looks like. I'm going to pop a stitch marker right here so we'll be able to see the difference. Okay, so from this stitch marker we have what it looks like with just treble 3 together, and this one with our treble 4 together. So there is a difference. They're both really nice. So this obviously does feel thicker. So it depends, I guess, on the results that you want. You're still going to achieve the same look with the treble 3 together as you would with the treble 4 together, but it's just a little bit tighter or a little bit looser. But that was an interesting experiment. Well, okay, so that is the stitch. I really do like it. I like it a lot in everything, whether that's cotton yarn or whether that is a variegated. That looks really nice in the variegated. And in the solid colour, again, it really does. I'll try not to undo it. The solid colour looks really nice as well. Lots of good stitch definition and texture. So I hope you like that one. Don't forget the left-handed version starts just after this one, and if you're watching it on a stitch combination, then the left-handed will be on a separate compilation. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye bye for now.